You are not stuck. You are rehearsing a vibration that doesn't belong to your future. What if, just imagine for a moment, what if the real reason you feel trapped isn't time, or lack, or failure, but a vibration you didn't even realize you've been repeating, not consciously, not deliberately, but subtly, quietly, inside your nervous system? What if you've been loyal to an emotional frequency that no longer fits the life you're praying for? Neville Goddard once said that it's not your desire that manifests, it's your state of being. It's not about wishing for something better. It's about becoming someone different. And the shift doesn't begin with action. It begins with identity, the kind of identity that hums beneath your thoughts, hidden in your posture, encoded in the way your breath moves in your chest when no one's watching. That's the real magnet. Not your goals, not your affirmations, but your invisible frequency, the one you're living from, even when your words say something else. Dr. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the body is the unconscious mind, that your body remembers the past, not as memory, but as mood, that you wake up each morning and feel a certain way, not because today is hard, but because yesterday left a fingerprint in your chemistry, and the day before that, and the one before that. So what you call reality might just be emotion, repeating itself in disguise, and this is where the idea of a quantum reset enters. Not as magic, not as escape, but as conscious interruption. You are not here to run away from your life. You are here to interrupt the pattern that's been running your life. That is the reset. It doesn't require years. It requires awareness and a willingness to disrupt what no longer feels like truth. This isn't about doing more. It's about stopping, pausing, noticing, choosing. The reset doesn't take time. It takes truth. That's why I say this. 24 hours isn't a promise. It's a portal, a doorway, waiting for you to step through, not with force, but with frequency. If you're still with me, if this feels like something you've been needing to hear, not as inspiration, but as confirmation, then stay. Stay until the end. Because what we're about to explore isn't a method, it's a mirror. And if it reflects something real back to you, subscribe. Not just to the channel, but to the version of you that's finally ready to vibrate the life you've been carrying inside. There's a moment, quiet and unnoticed, when you want something deeply, but vibrate in the opposite direction. It doesn't scream, it whispers. You say you want love, but your nervous system still expects abandonment. You visualize abundance, yet your breath shortens every time you look at your bank account. You affirm healing, but carry the posture of someone still waiting for the next wound. And this dissonance between the self you're becoming and the emotions you're rehearsing creates a trap so subtle, most never see it. This trap is not your fault. It's biology doing what biology does. Your limbic system, the emotional brain, isn't interested in dreams. It's interested in repetition. It wants to keep you alive, not fulfilled. So it replays the same emotional responses, the same patterns of thought, the same reactive loops, because that feels familiar, and the familiar, to the survival brain, feels safe, even if it hurts. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain capable of imagining a new future, speaks in images, in intentions, in possibilities. But your body speaks the language of memory. And every time you react from an old wound, even subtly, you reinforce the frequency of the life you say you're done with. Think of someone longing for a relationship. They meditate, they script, they visualize. But underneath, there's a tremor, a fear of not being chosen, buried in muscle memory. It lives in the eyes, in the way the shoulders tighten when they text and don't receive a reply. They want love, but they vibrate rejection. Not by choice, but by emotional habit. And then there's the quiet misuse of spirituality, not as a path of integration, but as a way to escape the parts of ourselves that ache. We chant, we journal, we chase synchronicities. But we forget that true transformation isn't in what we avoid, but in what we're willing to sit with. Spirituality is not about bypassing pain. It's about transmuting it. It's about facing the vibration we've been embodying and asking, does this still belong to the future I'm creating? You're not wrong for feeling stuck. You've just been frozen, not in time, but in tone, in a frequency that once protected you, but now prevents you. And the first step toward freedom is not changing the world around you. It's noticing the vibration you're rehearsing and recognizing that it's no longer yours. There's a beautiful illusion we often fall into, the belief that feeling something intensely is enough to create it. That if we can just summon joy, or confidence, or hope for a few minutes a day, the universe will respond in kind. But what if the field, that quantum matrix where all potential realities exist, isn't responding to your moments of passion, but to your dominant frequency? Not the peaks, but the baseline. Neville Goddard spoke of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But most misunderstand what he meant. They think it's about emotional excitement, about closing your eyes and trying to generate euphoria. But he wasn't pointing to an emotional spike. He was pointing to a vibrational identity, the quiet, constant hum beneath your thoughts. That's what creates. That's what magnetizes. That's what bends reality toward you. Because feeling isn't just a mood, it's a state. And unless that state becomes stable, unless it becomes the emotional home you return to again and again, it doesn't have the weight to collapse potential into form. The quantum field is not seduced by passion. It is aligned by coherence, by consistency. This is where the confusion deepens. Because sometimes what we call high vibration is just anxiety in disguise. The excitement of manifesting can mask a deeper fear, the fear that it won't happen, that we're still unworthy, that we need to do more, feel more, force more. And so we enter a cycle of over-efforting. We try to feel the wish fulfilled with so much intensity that it exposes our disbelief. The body hears the tension, the field feels the incoherence, and the manifestation remains suspended. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the quantum field responds not to how loudly we feel, but to how harmoniously we exist. It responds to coherence, the alignment of thought, emotion, and body. Not occasional enthusiasm, not spiritual hype, but the calm, grounded frequency of someone who already is what they seek. This is not a denial of emotion. It's an invitation to go deeper than emotion, into vibration, into identity, into the place where the feeling isn't something you generate. It's something you become. You don't need to feel more. You need to feel from a place that is no longer reaching. Because when you become the vibration of the wish fulfilled, you're not hoping, you're remembering, and the field knows the difference. There's a strange kind of exhaustion that comes not from failure, but from effort. The kind of effort that says, I must be doing it wrong. Or maybe if I try a little harder, I'll finally shift. It's subtle. It feels spiritual. It feels like commitment. But beneath it lies a hidden message that the nervous system can't ignore. I'm still not there. The more you chase a higher vibration, the more you confirm to your subconscious that you're not in it. Every attempt to feel better, every push to be more positive, subtly reinforces a gap. And this gap isn't just psychological, it's vibrational. It tells the quantum field, I'm still separate, I'm still reaching, I'm still waiting. This is the paradox. The harder you try to raise your frequency, the more you energize the belief that it isn't already within you. And that belief, not your intention, becomes the dominant signal. The body begins to seek altered states like it would a drug, not because it's aligned, but because it's addicted to the chase, to the temporary relief of escaping itself. But the quantum doesn't respond to escape. It responds to integration. It responds when the resistance drops, when the effort ends, and when your being, not your mind, finally accepts that you are already enough, that nothing needs to be added, only remembered. Imagine pushing water up a mountain. That's what this struggle becomes. The force feels noble, but the act itself defies the nature of flow. Water isn't meant to be pushed. It's meant to be guided. The same is true for frequency. The more you push, the more you disrupt your own current. And yet, when you stop forcing, not out of defeat, but out of surrender, the vibration begins to rise naturally, gently, without strain. This is not giving up. This is collapse. The collapse of resistance, of performance, of proving. In quantum language, this is the point at which all potential realities become available again. because you've stopped narrowing your energy through fear and started allowing your truth to surface through peace. So the invitation is not to try harder, it's to try softer, to soften into coherence, to melt into alignment, and to remember that the most magnetic vibration isn't forced, it's felt, from a place that no longer needs to become because it has finally remembered how to be. Sometimes, the most powerful shift doesn't come from changing your life, but from interrupting the way you emotionally rehearse it, noticing the loop, disrupting the loop, rewriting the loop. That's the quiet architecture of transformation, not through grand gestures, but through subtle acts of presence, small resets, repeated resets, micro adjustments that ripple through your entire frequency field. The first step is recognition, but not mental, sensory. Can you feel the shape of your current emotional loop in your body? Not the story around it, but the vibration underneath it. Is your chest tight? Is your breath shallow? Is there a heaviness behind your eyes? Or a low hum of urgency in your gut? These are not random sensations. They are the language of your frequency. Before you can shift, you must learn to listen. Then comes interruption, not by force, not by resistance, but by non-reaction. You pause, you breathe, deeply, slowly, with intention, and then you speak, not to the world, but to your own nervous system. A phrase, a sentence, not as affirmation, but as vibration. Something like, "This is not my forever frequency," or, "I remember who I am beneath this emotion." Words that don't push, but open. Words that don't fight the loop, but step outside of it. Finally, reconduction. This is where the imagination becomes not an escape, but a guide. You close your eyes and you see the version of you who lives in the state you're choosing, not as fantasy, but as vibrational rehearsal. You imagine not what they do, but how they feel, how they move, the rhythm of their breath, the quality of their stillness. You anchor into that image. You hear their inner voice. You let it echo inside you until it feels familiar, until it feels like home. This is not a one-time event. This is a daily rhythm, a sacred habit. And the beauty is, it doesn't require an hour. It requires a moment of awareness, a moment of breath, a moment of choosing a different frequency, not because you're broken, but because you remember how it feels to be whole. Use the morning as a portal. Use the evening as a reset. These are the thresholds when the subconscious is most open, most fluid, most able to let go of the old and accept the new. You don't need to change your whole life in a day, but you can choose, again and again, to interrupt the emotional patterns that have kept your frequency frozen in a version of you that no longer fits. It's not about doing more. It's about becoming more available to the frequency you've always carried, just beneath the noise. Not every low vibration screams. Some whisper, some smile, some disguise themselves as responsibility, as ambition, as humility. But beneath the mask, they pull your frequency down, gently, quietly, persistently. And perhaps the most dangerous ones are the ones that feel the most familiar. Guilt, hurry, comparison. Guilt is a frequency that hides in the language of should. I should be further along. I should be happier. I should be grateful. But guilt doesn't elevate. It punishes. It keeps you vibrating in a cycle of emotional self-correction, where every step forward is followed by a silent act of inner sabotage. You cannot manifest from guilt, because guilt binds you to the past. It makes the present feel undeserved. It makes the future feel unsafe. Then there is hurry, the frequency of disconnection from divine timing. It tells you that if it's not happening now, something is wrong, that delay is failure, that stillness is weakness. But hurry collapses coherence. It fragments your energy. It shortens your breath. It places your vibration into a frequency of scarcity, not just of money or love, but of time. And when you vibrate lack of time, you block the natural rhythm of alignment. And then comes comparison, perhaps the quietest saboteur. It wears the face of curiosity. You scroll, you notice, you wonder, why not me? And just like that, your nervous system forgets its own path. You tune out of your timeline and into someone else's. Not because you're weak, because your frequency was momentarily hijacked by a reality that was never meant to be yours. Comparison doesn't just create insecurity, it creates interference. It detunes you from your original signal. There's a story, soft and unremarkable, of a woman who, after years of chasing her vision boards and scripting journals, simply stopped trying to manifest anything quickly. She surrendered her timeline. She focused instead on alignment. Quiet mornings, still evenings, frequent pauses. She began choosing frequency over outcome. And then, without warning, life began to respond. Not because she forced it, but because she finally stopped vibrating effort and started vibrating truth. This isn't a lesson in doing less. It's a remembering of what you never lost. The moment you release guilt, you return to worthiness. The moment you slow down, you align with the divine. The moment you honor your own path, you become magnetically unavailable for anything that doesn't belong to your field. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not lost. You are simply remembering how to live in a frequency that was never meant to be rushed. There's a rhythm in nature that doesn't rush, doesn't demand, doesn't force. It waits, it prepares, it unfolds. And in that rhythm we find a deeper kind of intelligence, one that speaks not in urgency but in trust. Think of the bamboo. For years nothing breaks the surface. No visible progress, no sign of movement. And then, almost suddenly, it grows feet within days. But those days are not the miracle. The miracle was the years of invisible rooting. This is what vibrational patience looks like. A frequency that holds, not because it's weak, but because it's wise. A state of being that says, just because it's not visible yet, doesn't mean it's not becoming. We often confuse movement with manifestation, but the field doesn't respond to how fast you go. It responds to how true you are, and truth is rarely in a hurry. In the natural world, nothing blooms all year. There are seasons of stillness, of seeming dormancy, that are actually phases of deep alignment. The tree doesn't panic when winter arrives. The river doesn't rush to meet the ocean. There's a sacred intelligence in the waiting, and the same applies to you. When your frequency is aligned, there's nothing to chase, only to allow. Only to remain faithful to the invisible work unfolding inside you. Bruce Lipton speaks of epigenetics, how environment, belief, and perception shape biology, not instantly, gradually, through repetition, through coherence, through the consistency of new choices. And this applies not only to cells, but to reality. When you stay with a vibration long enough, not as a peak, but as a pattern, your world slowly begins to mirror it, not to reward you, but because you've become resonant with that version of reality. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A sudden burst of high vibration may feel powerful, but it's the quiet, steady pulse of coherence that the universe truly responds to. You don't need to vibrate perfectly, you only need to vibrate faithfully, to trust the root, even before the bloom. The field is not linear. It doesn't measure time like the clock. It listens to signal, not schedule. And in that listening, it responds not to urgency, but to resonance. So if things feel slow, don't panic. Don't collapse into doubt. Remember the bamboo. Remember the roots. And remember that sometimes the most profound shifts are the ones happening underground, where no one sees, but everything changes. There's a moment, quiet, sacred, when you close your eyes, and not to escape, but to remember. You see a version of yourself that isn't here yet, but feels more real than the one staring back in the mirror. You don't make it up, you meet it. You don't fantasize, you reconnect. This is the imaginal bridge, the place where your future self begins to whisper into your present moment. Neville Goddard said, "The feeling makes it real," and he wasn't speaking of wishful thinking. He was speaking of vibrational congruence, the invisible tether between what already exists in the field and the frequency you choose to embody now. It's not delusion, it's resonance, it's engineering. To feel what isn't yet physical isn't denial of reality. It's pre-synchronization with a reality that already exists in potential. So many live trapped between hope and evidence. They wait for something outside to prove that it's safe to believe. But belief is not the effect. It is the cause. The field doesn't wait for the world to catch up. It bends to coherence. It responds to inner alignment. And your imagination, when used not as fantasy, but as frequency, becomes the code that calls reality toward you. Think of the artist who paints long before a gallery notices, the writer who weaves words in silence, long before a reader appears, the healer who channels peace in solitude, long before a single client arrives. These are not acts of pretending. They are acts of vibrating, of becoming, of walking the bridge between the seen and the unseen with a nervous system that no longer needs proof, only presence. The imagination isn't childish. It's sacred. It's not where you go to hide. It's where you go to remember who you were before you forgot, before the trauma, before the conditioning, before the world convinced you to only trust what you could touch. And here's the quiet truth. You don't need the world to believe in your vision. You need your nervous system to believe in your vibration. That's the real alignment. That's the bridge that doesn't collapse. And once it's built, not in the sky, but in the body, you'll begin to notice. The world doesn't reflect what you want. It reflects what you've become willing to feel as true before it arrives. The real shift doesn't start with a technique. It doesn't begin with a morning routine or a vision board. It begins the moment you stop asking the world to change and start becoming the frequency that no longer needs to wait for permission. That's the portal. That's the reset. Not to a new life, but to a new origin point. A different self, humming beneath the surface, already aligned with everything you thought you had to chase. Bruce Lipton reminds us that our beliefs shape biology, that our cells are not passive. They are listening to thoughts, to emotions, to expectations. You don't vibrate what you wish for. You vibrate what your nervous system has accepted as inevitable. That's why affirmations without integration feel hollow. The body doesn't believe in words. It believes in consistency, in frequency, in emotional memory. And Neville Goddard said it clearly. Everything is created from the invisible, but the invisible is not out there. It's you, the you that exists when no one is watching, when the masks fall, when the effort quiets, when the truth rises. That's where creation begins. Not from control, but from coherence. Not from strategy, but from surrender. When you stop pretending to be okay and allow your frequency to speak honestly, reality begins to adjust. The quantum reset isn't about becoming someone else. It's about shedding what was never you to begin with. It's not about forcing a new timeline. It's about dissolving the interference, the emotional static, the old identities, the inherited beliefs that have kept you disconnected from your natural frequency. Because that's the truth. You don't have to build a new self. You just have to stop rehearsing the version that was built in survival. And so, if you felt something here, not just in your mind, but in your body, let that be your signal. Not to do more, but to remember, to return, to choose gently the vibration that matches what you've been silently calling home. If this video sparked something real in you, share it with someone who might need a reset today. Comment what part spoke to your vibration, and subscribe for more practical spirituality from soul to science.